Okay, so remember, glycolysis happens in the cell cytoplasm. It's going to take glucose and break it down into two pyruvate molecules. It's also going to produce two molecules of ATP. So let's actually get into this aerobic part of cell respiration. In the aerobic part of cell respiration, all right, it's going to start with the Krebs cycle, or we could call it the citric acid cycle. But in this Krebs cycle, you're going to take those two pyruvate molecules from the cytoplasm and transfer them into the matrix of the mitochondria. Remember, the matrix is inside the inner membrane of the mitochondria. Once those two pyruvate molecules are transferred into the matrix of the mitochondria, let me go back just real quick and look at the matrix again. So here's the picture of the mitochondria. Here is the inner membrane. Here is the matrix, okay? The matrix of the mitochondria. So those two pyruvate molecules are going to be transferred into this part. All right, once they get transferred into the matrix of the mitochondria, they're going to be processed, okay? And as a result, you're going to get ATP. You're going to get two more ATP molecules produced through the reaction that they go through in the matrix of the mitochondria. You're also going to get some carbon dioxide produced. And you're also going to get two of these things that we're going to call electron carriers. We're going to name one of them NADH, and we're going to name one FADH2. Now, later we'll get into what those names mean, but in essence, they're just going to be considered electron carriers. They're going to carry electrons to other processes in this respiration process we're looking at. Okay, so in the Krebs cycle, this first part of aerobic respiration, those two pyruvate molecules are going to be transferred into the mitochondria, into the matrix. Here they're going to react in the matrix, and they're going to produce two more ATPs. They're going to make these electron carriers, and they're also going to produce byproducts of carbon dioxide. All right, so we're talking about aerobic respiration. You have to have oxygen present for this part to occur. The Krebs cycle is the first stage of the aerobic respiration. It's going to take those pyruvate molecules that were made in glycolysis inside the mitochondria. It's going to transform them into ATP. It's also going to make two electron carriers, and it's also going to produce a byproduct of carbon dioxide. The next stage is the electron transport chain. So the ETC, okay, the ETC, this electron transport chain, this is going to occur after the Krebs cycle. We're looking at just aerobic respiration, okay? So now we have the two electron carriers, NADH and FADH2. These electron carriers are going to carry electrons that have been juiced up with really high amounts of energy. All right, NADH and FADH2 are going to carry those electrons to specific membrane proteins within the mitochondria. As they when they drop them off, okay, you can kind of look at this picture. When they drop them off at these at this membrane, at this multi-protein membrane complex on the mitochondria, these electrons are going to travel down this chain, this protein chain in this membrane complex. And as it moves, now this is very simple. This is a very simple view. We're not getting into the details yet, like the very complex details. It's just a simple picture. As the electrons move down this protein chain, this protein complex within the membrane of the mitochondria, energy is going to be transferred from those electrons along the way. Okay. once the electrons are kind of put through this conveyor belt of proteins, and energy is siphoned off of them, is released from them, they'll eventually make it to the end of this protein complex in this protein conveyor belt, if you will, in the membrane, where they're going to be added to an oxygen molecule. Once they're added to this oxygen molecule here at the end, that helps produce water as a byproduct. Okay, so let's talk about that one more time. In the Krebs cycle, NADH and FADH2 are made. Okay, those are electron carriers. They're going to take these electrons that have a lot of energy added to them, and it's going to carry them to a particular membrane complex, protein complex within the mitochondrial membrane. Here, some processes are going to occur. These electrons are going to be dropped off, and as they travel down a conveyor belt of this membrane, processes are going to be siphoning energy off of them, okay, all the energy that they can until these electrons make it to the end and they're pretty much out of energy. Then they're going to be added to oxygen, which helps make a byproduct of water, and it's done. Here's another way of looking at it. Here is the membrane, the inner membrane, that inner mitochondrial membrane. Look at the picture of the membrane again. Here's a rough picture, okay? Here is the inner folded membrane. So on the inner membrane, these electrons are going to be carried to a protein complex. In essence, here you can see this protein complex, okay? A series of proteins on the membrane inside the mitochondria. They're going to be carried there. NADH or FADH2, one of the two, is going to drop them off. And then as these electrons get transferred along this protein chain, it's going to be releasing energy until all of the energy can be harvested. Okay, it's going to be harvested by this process. What we're going to call each one of these proteins, we're going to call them, remember we've talked about these particular types of proteins, we're going to call them protein pumps, those ion pumps. And once energy is siphoned off from these electrons, what's left over are hydrogen ions, and these proteins are going to pump them out. They're going to siphon the energy from those electrons and pump out the leftover ions. Eventually, once you get down to the very end and all the energy has been siphoned off, okay, then the remainder is going to be added to oxygen to create these remaining hydrogen ions, since there's no more electrons because all the electrons have been siphoned off and all of the energy has been used from them. The leftover hydrogen ions, remember they're positive, they're just protons, are going to be added to oxygen to create water as a byproduct. And then all of this energy then that's going to be siphoned off is going to be used in ATP synthase, which just means the synthesizing of energy, and it's going to form ATP in the end process. All right, I know this is a little confusing to understand, so let's do just a quick recap. Aerobic respiration, it's going to need oxygen. It's going to take the pyruvate molecules made from glycolysis. It's going to transfer those into the inner membrane of the mitochondria in this matrix area. Here they are going to react to form the NADH and FADH2, those electron carriers. It's also going to produce a byproduct of carbon dioxide. From there, that's the Krebs cycle, right? That's the Krebs cycle, the first stage of aerobic respiration. From there, those electron carriers are going to carry, here's an example, here's an electron carrier. NADH is going to carry those electrons to the inner membrane where there's a protein complex, and here you can see the particular protein complex. It's going to carry them here, and then these electrons are going to be pumped, if you will, through these membranes. They're going to be siphoned off, and the excess is going to be just the hydrogen protons. Okay, so they're all going to be siphoned off, and eventually all of the energy is going to be collected All right, all the energy is going to be collected in the last part of this protein complex, and this is where ATP is going to be made. And then the leftover protons are just going to go into helping form water as a byproduct. All right, here's just another look at it one more time. This is protein, this ETC, this electron transport chain. As these hydrogen protons are pumped into the inner membrane space, the matrix, if you will, or the inner membrane space outside the, not the matrix, but outside the inner membrane, okay? It's going to form a concentration gradient. You'll notice that the higher concentration, lower concentration, it's going to form this concentration gradient. Then these hydrogen protons are going to pass back through the membrane through facilitated diffusion using a type of proton pump. Okay. This proton pump is called ATP synthase. What is ACE going to mean? It's an enzyme. So an enzyme that's going to facilitate the production of ATP. This last part of the electron transport chain, where you get this ATP synthase protein, that's going to harvest the large amounts of energy from all of those electrons. This is where most of the ATP in cell respiration is going to be produced. One process of cell respiration is going to produce about 38 molecules of ATP total. This last part of the electron transport chain is going to produce 34. So this is where most of the ATP will be produced in one cell respiration process. Okay, so ATP is going to be used once this is done. It's going to be used in energy for movement of muscles. It can be used in any type of energy process. It can be used to help break down foods again. Okay, so once this is done and energy is produced, we can use it in other parts of that organism, as far as if it's humans, if it's plants, if it's animals, whatever organism we're talking about. So quick look at it. We know we got glycolysis, then through aerobic respiration we got the Krebs cycle, electron transport chain, that all makes aerobic respiration. And then that total from the electron transport chain, the total number of ATP you can get from just the electron transport chain is 34. Together, the whole process of aerobic respiration is going to produce 38 total ATP molecules. You get 2 of them produced when glycolysis occurs. You'll get 2 more produced when the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle occurs. And then you get that really large bang of ATP production in the electron transport chain. So through aerobic respiration is the most efficient. It gives us the most amount of energy produced, and it's going to be through each aerobic respiration process you get 38 ATP molecules produced. So that's by far the most.